Namaskar and welcome to Samvad. India was supposed to be US's most important strategic partnership in Asia. US had become India's largest trade and investment partner. Defense ties were expanding. Export controls of advanced equipment and technologies were being eased for India. Space cooperation was increasing. Counter-terrorism efforts were increasing. But then, I'll call it Trumplomacy took control. Now, if you watch the daily briefings from the United States, it seems that it was India which invaded Ukraine, India which attacked Israel on the 7th of October, India which is destroying Gaza, and India could very soon take control of Taiwan and has ambitions in South China Sea. That is how it appears to be. To discuss the finer details of Trumplomacy, we have with us Shri Sibal, former Foreign Secretary. Welcome to Samvad, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Sir, as if it was not enough writing that India if India wants to be treated as a strategic partner to the US, it needs to act like one and seize its opportunistic trade with India. Peter Navarro, the trade advisor to President Trump, has gone ahead and is now calling India the Laundromat for the Kremlin. He's accused India of acting as global clearinghouse for the Russian oil. He claims that India is profiteering. And then he talks about Maharaja tariffs and how India is basically funding the entire. He's building up an argument. He tries to be very logical and he tries to be trying to build up an argument that India is basically financing the whole invasion of Ukraine. He also says that India is cozying up to Xi Jinping. There are lots of things going on, and then the road to peace in Ukraine runs through Delhi. India is not acknowledging its role in the bloodshed, and he's not the only one then. Then US Treasury Secretary Scot Bessent has said that India is buying discounted crude from Moscow and reselling refined products as an unacceptable arbitrage. He's also said that India's richest families are profiteering from this war. Sir, as Trumplomacy, you have seen diplomacy for such a long time, seen all the facets of diplomacy. How does one explain this?
Difficult to explain this because while the United States has been wanting to and has actually dominated the rest of the world and feels that its rate must run everywhere, yet the discourse vis-a-vis India has not descended to this level in recent years, especially after a nuclear deal, when efforts were made by 3 presidents to consolidate India-US ties with the geopolitical ends in view, as also seeing that India was a rising economic power to be able to access the Indian market. Plus, of course, recognizing the great talent in India in certain areas where the United States has the lead in the world, especially in the high-tech area. The big tech companies in the United States, who many of them have Indians as their CEOs, have been deeply engaged with India. Even in areas like semiconductor or artificial intelligence, the largest number of designers of chips are Indian. In the artificial intelligence sector, the largest number of people working on artificial intelligence are in India. And they have close ties with American companies. Look at the global capability centers, 1,700 of them that have been set up. 60% of them are by American corporations. Then there is the China threat that the United States began to perceive, especially during Trump's first term. If you recall, Mike Pence, who was his vice president, the speech he had given, where he had outlined how China, as an all-government policy, was stealing US technology, was pursuing policies to take China, to make China not only a peer competitor, but to outclass United States progressively. And it was actually quite a read. I read it at that time. Very, very comprehensive anti-China attack. So that prompted Trump to raise the Quad to political level. Earlier on, it was at the official level. And Quad and Indo-Pacific concept and all that began to get much greater substance subsequently during the Biden administration. Other agreements were signed, the ICET being a major example of this. Plus, of course, all these corridors, IMET and the ITU2, everything else, plus defense ties. All the foundational agreements were signed. The Malabar exercise became more and more complex. We had Army, Navy, Air Force bilateral exercises with the United States, including tri-services exercises, and even in certain delicate areas, sensitive areas in the north of India. Plus, they gave some assistance, intelligence, and otherwise during the Galvan episode. So the relationship, as you just said, was being described as the defining partnership of the 21st century. Now, what had happened since then? India, just because India bought Russian oil, so everything is collapsing. And the Russian oil
But is that all,
was
sir?
bought. No, I'm just coming to that. Was being bought at discounted prices, which had been imposed illegally by the United States and Europe. We have said, our foreign minister has said now on Russian soil, yesterday, day before, that actually the United States asked us to buy Russian oil to keep international prices of oil stable. And he pointed out quite rightly that China is a bigger buyer of Russian oil. In this context, before I go on, I have said recently on X that China gets Russian oil and gas through pipelines. These are based on long-term contracts. Nothing to do with discounted prices. And there is no way you can actually assess how much they have bought, how much they have not bought. And they have rejected sanctions and this and that. But there are no tariffs on China. Now, there was no compulsion on the part of anyone, including Europe, to buy refined products from India sourced from the purchase of Russian oil. We're not thrusting this down anybody's throat that you have to buy from us. But look at, and that's where the hypocrisy and lies of people like Navarro get exposed. Trump, during his first time, spoke against the Nord Stream pipeline. And he says, I'll sell you LNG and I'll set up this infrastructure in Poland for export of US LNG. And now, and after that, as you know, they blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. And now they have compelled Europe to buy US LNG at much, much higher prices. And in the latest framework agreement, Europe has committed itself to buying $750 billion worth of US LNG in the next 3 years, while Trump is in power. So they have actually thrust this down forcibly down the throat of the EU by wielding power. Did we tell the Europeans that you better behave? You better buy oil, refined products from us. Otherwise, we'll sanction you or this or that. So what is the argument? We bought Russian oil, which was not sanctioned in accordance with the illegal price caps. It was refined along with other oil that we buy. Our companies refined that. Europe needed these products. They bought these products from us legally. They use their normal shipping for this purpose. Where is it that India, now, with regard to this bloodshed that we are responsible for the killings and this and that and that. First of all, they have been themselves saying that but for China's military assistance to Russia, Russia would not have been able to pursue this war. And that China is supporting Russia in various ways. This has been the discourse at the official level. And even in their bilateral discussions, when the European Union has gone to China, van der Leyen has said that China must stop supporting Russia. India was never in the picture. That is because of the discounted oil that we bought. Russia has the resources to continue this bloodshed. And why is this bloodshed continuing? Because the US and Europe are fighting a proxy war against Russia through Ukraine. They're giving more and more arms, more and more funds, billions of them, and they still are doing that. So that the war continues. And the discourse is what? Earlier it was that we have to impose a strategic defeat on Russia. Now the discourse is that if Russia wins in Ukraine, then our security is in danger. So therefore we have to stop Russia and Ukraine because we want to actually protect our future generations from the Russian threat. And that Ukraine and the West must have negotiations with Putin from a position of strength. So who's continuing this war? Who's continuing this bloodshed? Who's continuing these killings? And what have we been doing? Right from the start, we've been saying, please solve this through dialogue and diplomacy. Prime Minister went all the way to Putin and took a risk by saying that this is not an era of war, and which was interpreted as a rebuke by our Prime Minister to Putin. Then he went to Ukraine, to Kiev, and he talked to Zelensky. So we kept our dialogue open with both sides and constantly supported a dialogue. Now, when it comes to profiteering, if United States companies, it's not the United States government, if the United States companies are selling LNG to Europe at much higher prices than Europe was getting from Russia, who's profiteering? Who's profiteering? And when they commit the European Union to buy defense equipment, which is there in the framework agreement, who gets money out of this? It's the US companies. They are going to profiteer from this because instead of Europe buying European, they're going to buy American. Much to the chagrin of countries like France, who think that Europe must buy European. And then America is built on profiteering in every way. It is built. You know, one of the American presidents is there on one of the buildings, I think a commerce building of the United States. You go there and you will see that, which says, and I've seen it myself, the business of America is business. They are the guys who only talk of money, who only talk of profits, who only talk of bottom lines, who only talk about shareholder value, everything. All other values are discarded. The most important value is the shareholder value. And this guy is saying that Indian companies are profiteering from this. I mean, they are just leveraging the market. There's a business opportunity, so business companies are taking the opportunity to buy at a low price. Because you mean they have no commitment to their shareholders. They can't give them better value. Only the American companies can give them. What kind of utter nonsense is this? But they're spewing all sorts of rubbish. People like Navarro. I mean, he caught the whole situation insane. I think he is politically insane to talk like this.
Sir, is he acting independently?
No. Two things. This is my guess. Two things is that he knows what the mood is, what Trump's mood is, what the White House mood is. And therefore, he's ingratiating himself even more and more to the Trump administration, to Trump himself. And this increases, he thinks, his role and value. in terms of being a spokesman for what the White House feels. After all, you want to have a public recognition. Otherwise, as a Harvard kind of I don't know what his background is, advisor, he will just disappear into the shadows. So how do you keep yourself, upfront in terms of public attention? You have to do these things. So there are multiple motives.
So I was just going through this the China factor, sir. I mean, 145% from 145%. There was a stage when we reached 145% tariff for China, and then it has come down to 30%, and the negotiations, the whole thing has been suspended. Whereas India is getting punished by the day. Now Navarro says that 27th August, the rest 25% will also kick in, and they speak that they cannot damage relations with China to a point where that it starts hurting the US interests. I understand that China has something which US wants, rare earth material, metals, whatever. They have plenty of things to offer. But India is not, I mean, I was just going through the whole thing, thinking about it. Sir, India has the youngest demographic dividend. Indian academicians, we are not stealing IPR, we are not doing anything illegal with the United States. We have a very good, and we are democracies. So why this sudden antipathy? I mean, there's sudden antipathy that India is the villain, because when you hear Navarro, at times it feels so insulting, it feels demeaning. I mean, listening to things which don't exist. So there has to be something in this Trumplomacy also, which I keep calling it. It's not an official word, but I keep referring to it. That there has got to be something behind it. Is it personal animus?
Well, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, also keeps talking a lot of nonsense in the same vein.
Even Marco Rubio, sir.
Marco Rubio is a little more careful, more
A bit
balanced.
more careful, just a bit more careful.
But let me, before I answer your question, let me come back to something else which is important. Now, Scott Bessent said, I don't know, Navarro may have repeated it or not repeated it. Yes, he has in a different way, that before the Ukraine war started, we were importing 1 or 2%. And then after the war started, we started importing 30, 35%. Earlier he said 40, now he's come back. Now he said 30, 35. Anyway, the point is, before that, Russian oil was too expensive for us. So the transportation costs were very heavy. And we had access to oil from the Middle East and this and that and that. So the transportation factor was not making purchase of oil by us, our public sector companies, or our private sector companies sufficiently profitable or economic, rather. Now, once the discounted Russian oil came into the market, which is below the market price, then obviously our companies went in for that. But, and this is the important thing, in terms of the percentage of oil we get from Russia, compared to the percentages of oil that we get from elsewhere, the figures are pretty different. Only 20% of our oil is coming from Russia. We have a very diverse sources of oils. 20% is from Russia, 16 to 18% is from Saudi Arabia or from Iraq, about 16%. My figures may not be 100% accurate, but roughly like that. 16% from Saudi Arabia, 10% from UAE, 6% from Nigeria, and another 5-6% from Angola and other places. So in the 84% of oil that we import, the share of Russian oil is only 20%. And there is a lot of diversification, because this fellow, this idiot, sorry for the language, Navarro, who doesn't know his subject, said that, oh, China has diversified. And that's an excuse he gave for not imposing tariffs. Because it's not as if they're buying more oil from Russia than before, but they have diverse sources. We are equally diverse. And perhaps even more so, we have no pipelines coming from Russia into India. Anyway, but the question you asked, can you? I lost a thread a bit.
I was talking about the personal animus aspect.
Yeah. Okay. The thing is, there is something personal in it. he wanted to get credit for the ceasefire between India and Pakistan. He has no political sensitivity of any kind. He doesn't understand Indian politics, domestic politics of India. There's nobody to advise him. So he thought that he can just go and blurt out that I organized a ceasefire, putting India and Modi in a very tight spot, because the implication was twofold. Either we were being hit badly and we wanted United States to intervene and organize a ceasefire, or we buckled under US pressure and we suddenly and we agreed to a ceasefire. Now, whichever of the two you take, it is a huge internal problem for Modi and the ruling party.
True.
And the opposition has taken full advantage of it, as we've seen in the parliamentary proceedings. Now it appears, and then of course he went ahead and talked about mediating between India and Pakistan, which again is utterly ridiculous. I mean, he has no information assessment of the sensitivity of this subject for India. We have rejected third-party mediation since decades. We don't accept it. And here is America coming back into the whole game of mediation and, in a sense, boosting Pakistan's demands and internationalizing the Kashmir issue. So I think that, I believe, I don't know, that when he spoke to our Prime Minister in Canada, inviting him to come to Washington, D.C., while he was entertaining this rabid anti-Hindu field marshal of Pakistan, I believe that Prime Minister may have expressed his concern strongly about this mediation business and possibly about the ceasefire. And that has riled him, because he thought that this was a sort of good feather in his cap to be able to make a bid for the Nobel Peace Prize. And since then, 28 times, he's insisted that I sort of was responsible for the ceasefire and revived this bogey of a nuclear showdown in the subcontinent. Again, playing Pakistan's game, because that has always been their argument, that external powers must intervene between India and Pakistan, because otherwise it will go out of hand and there'll be a nuclear showdown. We are a nuclear power and stuff like that. And our friend, this field marshal, false field marshal, has repeated these threats in United States and Florida while talking to the diaspora, that don't forget we're a nuclear power and we'll bring half the world down if we are pushed into a corner. So it's become personal. It's become personal, yes. See, when Trump got his way with Japan and EU, if you look at my postings on posts on X, I had said that it's going to be very difficult for us, because his tail is up. He has tasted blood, and if he can bring the EU, which is a formidable entity, if they were really to exert their strengths, and Japan and South Korea, he thinks that he can browbeat India, forgetting that all these three entities, they're dependent on US for their security. India is not dependent on US for its security. And we have more margin for maneuver. Neither the European Union nor Korea nor Japan are part of alternative structures like the SCO, like BRICS is more important, BRICS and SCO or what have you, where they can be part of forums which actually want to carve out a cooperation amongst themselves, which is not determined by the West or overlooked by the West in terms of what is permissible, what is not permissible. So they're terribly worried that we may start trading in our national currencies. They may lead to de-dollarization, this and that. This is the stuff that gives us a little margin for maneuver, that if you push us too hard, then we have options which we don't want to use, because we have a very positive stake in our relations with the United States. We want to keep it that way.
True.
But if you close your doors, and if you're so unreasonable with us, and you slap us with tariffs, which are totally unreasonable, then you give us no choice. I mean, we have to also look at the welfare of our people, and we have to protect our economy, and we have to make sure that our growth rates are maintained. We look for alternative export markets. We will trade more in our national currencies with others, so that we are not obliged to use the dollar and then be open to sanctions and this and that. So I think the long and short is that Trump has delivered very serious body blows to the India-US relationship, and it will take a long time for the wounds he has inflicted to heal.
So there are many in India who say that India Prime Minister Modi and his establishment, the whole foreign policy team, should have handled Trump in a different way, sir. And I have this.
Let me stop you. If let me stop you, but then you can continue. If
Sir.
Trump had handled himself in a different way, we wouldn't have the need to handle him in a different way. Anyway, go on.
So I was reading this post on. I agree with what you say, sir. But I mean, this is the Indian. There is a certain Indian perspective. Certain people. I was reading this post by Dr. Brahmachalani, sir. I respect him a lot, sir. I agree with most of his views. But he said that, I mean, quoting him, dealing with mercurial Trump requires tact and outreach, including massaging his ego. As yesterday's White House meeting, it is on the 19th August, showed with European leaders and Zelensky applying lessons they have learned in negotiating with him. By contrast, Modi sulked instead of reaching out to Trump to dissuade him from punitive actions against India. Now, this means to say that maybe, I mean, I'm not sure as to what exactly he means to say, but I believe he wants to say that India should have handled with, I mean, placated his ego, pampered his ego. I don't agree, sir. Your views?
Well, I'm surprised that Brahma is saying that, because I respect his views, and on many issues we are on the same wavelength. But on this, I'm a bit surprised that he's taking this line. Now, Europe is massaging his ego because Europe is so desperate to keep him involved in the Ukraine conflict, to make sure that he doesn't walk away from Europe, because they are feeling very vulnerable. They have committed themselves so deeply in the Ukraine conflict, and continue to do so. And knowing they have no resources, economic or defense resources, to actually do what they are promising. Maybe in 10 years' time, if they build up their defense capabilities and the economy start doing better, maybe they can do something. But in a situation where their economies are doing very poorly, indebtedness is very high, Germany is virtually heading towards some kind of a recession, and it's the motor of the European Union. And they've committed themselves to opposing Russia to the last Ukrainian. They need absolutely United States. And they feel often when the United States threatens to walk out. That's why they are massaging his ego, because they want him desperately to stay engaged. And they think if together some of those leaders go to the White House and bombard him with their thinking and views, after all, they're not negligible powers. They have a lot of geopolitical experience. Some of them been big colonial powers. And together, if the economy is not as big, but virtually as big as the United States, the population is even larger than that of the United States. They have huge manufacturing capabilities, so they have assets to play with. So, but they're feeling they're not united. After all, there are 27 countries. Whenever they agree, they have to agree, at the lowest common denominator. Look at the way in which Hungary is preventing them from transferring funds to Ukraine, as also Ukraine's EU membership and everything else. This is their weakness. So Trump pushed them, said, look, you're not bearing your burden. You must increase. Earlier, he had said that you must increase your defense spending as part of GDP to 2.5%, and now he said 5%.
5%.
So and they have agreed in principle. They don't have the money, but they have agreed in principle. And now Japan is totally dependent. Anyway, let's talk about Europe. So this massaging, and then look at the manner in which I commented on that, in which Trump received them in the White House. When I was foreign secretary and I was having a officers meeting with joint secretaries, they would sit across the table like the way the European powers are sitting across the table from Trump. It's humiliating. Can you imagine the president of France, the chancellor of Germany? I can understand small countries like Finland and others being in that position, or for that matter, even the Prime Minister of Britain sitting like that in a position of subordinates. Anyway, now I can't imagine. Let's say if there were 4, 5, 6 leaders in whatever context went to the White House, I can't imagine Modi sitting like that with other leaders. There's no way. There's no way. He will be castigated, pilloried, quite apart from the fact that he won't do it. But were he to do it, let's say, he'll be pilloried by Indian public opinion and political opinion. But Europe is what it is. So what does this massaging of ego means? Now, there are some who are saying, not Brahma, I think this is what he's implying, but he's not said that. There are some who are saying that, Modi could have said, oh, thank you very much for your intervention because you pushed Pakistan to agree to a ceasefire, and the Pakistanis came begging to us through the DGMO. And good, thank you very much. Because we were not interested in escalation. So you drilled some good sense into the Pakistanis, so they came begging for a ceasefire. Now, the problem in this is all right, you can say these things. Given that Trump is so much committed to Pakistan for a variety of reasons, including some business deals, supposing he had come back and said that this is not correct. True. Because actually you are actually taking a line that the pressure was only on Pakistan, not on India. So what he was saying about using the trade weapon against both countries, saying that I'm not going to trade with you, I won't have a trade deal with you. So you are again refuting what he said. And supposing he had given a clarification, that is not quite true. That I put, both sides were asked to under the threat of trade pressures, to agree to a ceasefire. Otherwise, Pakistan would be in a very difficult position, that the pressure was only on Pakistan. And supposing he said that, what would you have done? How would you have massaged his ego again? I mean, this is just speculative. A man who's so irrational in terms of what he says, if it involves his ego and the impression he wants to give that he wins in every situation, etc., etc. I think you have to judge his character before you say these kind of things, that you should have massaged his ego. I mean, how much and how many times and to what degree would you keep massaging his ego? Because this ego is not massaging is not a one-time affair. It can go on to other issues. And when it comes to the trade deal, how do you massage his ego? Saying, you want access to our agriculture and you want to have access to a dairy and this and that. So fine, we'll give it to you. So massage his ego. I don't accept this argument.
Tough times, but I'm sure that the times will also pass, sir. And constraints of time right now, sir. So I have to conclude on this part only. And there are lots of things evolving. I'll request you to keep coming back to us, spare time for us. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.